Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 59, brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear. Today, I'm talking with a good friend of mine about his transition from being a non-hunter to becoming a hunter. So stay tuned. All right, what is up, friends? Happy Wednesday to you all out there. I hope the hump day is treating you well. Today we got a super cool show. I'm really excited to share this podcast with you guys. You probably heard me talk about in the past, whether it was with John or, I think even when we had Ryan Fuhr on, I brought it up when we were doing the Hunting Heritage podcast, that I have a friend of mine who has never hunted before, and I was planning to take him on a turkey hunt, his first hunt ever. And this podcast is a conversation between he and I talking about, how he feels prior to hitting the turkey woods for the first time and starting that venture and, the things that we love to do, which is, getting out into the timber and do some hunting. I thought it was really kind of interesting to kind of have a discussion with him. A lot of times I think we as hunters tend to talk to ourselves a lot, and what I mean by that is that we oftentimes find people who share the same views, the same opinions, and same ideas, and those are the people we most often converse with. I think, not to get too deep, but it's kind of human nature. We're homogeneous by nature. We want to be around people who are like us. It's why your group of friends typically are have the same, or in the same kind of socioeconomic, strata as you are, and so on and so forth. So, if we take that same kind of approach and we look at like who we talk to and who we spend the most of our time with and discuss, things that are important and meaningful to us, it's probably people who are a lot like us. So I always think it's interesting to kind of get outside of our comfort zones a little bit and talk to people who are maybe a little bit different. And, my friend Trevor is a guy who I've worked with for a bunch of years, for several years. I wouldn't say a bunch. We became really good friends. He's a dude who's always interested in new, in interesting ideas and things. He's a super open-minded guy. And he'd always ask me about my hunting trips that I was going on and stuff. And he's also super into food, and is kind of a bit of a foodie, if you will. And so as we are, our friendship continued to kind of grow and stuff, we started talking more and more about hunting, and he knew that it was something that was a really big part of my life, and he took an interest in it. And so one day as we were talking, I just kind of finally asked him if he would want to go hunting. I think we were talking about turkey hunting and that he had never eaten a wild turkey. And that's the case, I would imagine, for a lot of folks out there that don't hunt. They probably don't often eat wild game, so, turkey specifically being something that's common for people that they have around Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc. They've only ever experienced the store-bought version. And so, his question to me was, if you kill a turkey, are you going to eat it? And my answer was, of course, yes, I'm going to eat it. And his response was, I've only ever had store-bought turkey. I would really love to see, what a wild turkey tastes like. Because to that point, I had shared some venison with him, I think some elk meat, some goose, so he had wild game, other wild game, and turkey was just something he had never had, which was interesting because it's the most common thing, I think, in terms of like the game foods or the game proteins, if you will, that we eat from a domesticated perspective. And so my response was, sure, I would eat it. And I said that, I would, of course, share some with him if he would like to try it. And then I just kind of thought about it for a second and said, and this, of course, happens in, a nanosecond as your brain kind of works. And, I thought to myself that, a lot of times I think, again, we as hunters, not only do we speak to our own audience most often, and talking to people have the same viewpoints, so we're not really changing people's minds in that regard and pushing hunting forward, I guess, if you will. But I think also we talk a lot about hunter recruitment and the things that we should individually be doing to help secure our hunting heritage. And I'm just as guilty as anybody. It's something that's important to me, but whenever I sit and I think about it, am I really doing my part? Am I doing as much as I can do? Of course, I take my daughter out to hunt, and, that's important to get youth involved and so forth. But if we go back to the conversation I had with Ryan Fuhr about what makes the most impact, bringing an adult, person into the hunting fold is more impactful immediately because they have the resources to get themselves out into the woods. They've got a car, they can buy a hunting license, they can purchase a gun, whatever equipment's necessary for whatever type of hunting that they want to do. And so when I asked myself, am I doing as much as I can do? I think the answer was probably no. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing anything, but did I think that I could do more? And that answer was yes. And have I taken an adult hunter out before and tried to introduce someone who was interested? The answer to that was no. And, I think a lot of times we have reasons for that. Deer hunting, of course, is one of those things that's really, have a deep passion for. And so a lot of times you run at 100 miles per hour during that. And that's really hard to introduce a hunter into that kind of realm. At least it would be for me, because some of the hunts that I'm doing are a little, might be tougher than, or more challenging maybe than, a beginner might enjoy. So you have to be kind of mindful in that. And so at that moment, I kind of thought that this was the perfect opportunity to do more and kind of put my money where my mouth is, where it's like, I know I've talked about hunter recruitment and these things that are important. And so this was a chance for me to kind of follow through on those things. And so my response to him, in a long way of saying, it was whenever he was asking if he could try some of the turkey if I got one, my response was, well, why don't I just take you and you kill your own? And he was kind of stunned by that, response, because I don't think he was expecting me to just say, hey, I'm going to take you. I think I should just take you hunting. You should try this for yourself. And in like a nanosecond, he was like, are you serious? He's like, I would love to do that. And so it was one of those things where you probably don't realize how interested someone might be in doing something like that until you just kind of offer the opportunity. And I have to say, like, in this podcast that you're about to listen to with Trevor is like right after, I took him with my friend Wilson out to shoot, and he shot in the past. He's actually a really good shot. So he's handled guns before. So he was kind of ahead of the curve in that regard. But this conversation is really about like his feelings before he actually hits the woods and actually goes hunting. So I think the net here is that, if you have someone that you think might be interested in hunting, it doesn't ever hurt to offer it up. I will say, I think, Trevor, we'll see after he goes on his hunt if it was a rewarding experience for him or not. But I will have to say that, I've had a rewarding experience to this point just in helping him, whether it was take his hunter safety test, which he had to do, which was awesome that he got done, pick up a license, talk about, how you set up to hunt birds, what type of setup we're going to use, what happens when a bird approaches, what's going on this time of year, why the birds act the way they do this time of year. So it was really rewarding for me to kind of share all those things with him, to someone who is interested, and see how excited he would get about certain things as it's all brand new to him. And, I won't belabor the point any longer. We'll go ahead and get into this podcast with Trevor, but just wanted to give everyone just a little bit of context for that. But before we jump into the podcast, let's talk about our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. We are brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear, the longest lasting, fastest cutting, toughest tree trimming equipment you've ever used. Simply put, the toughest saws on earth. How tough? Tough enough to come with a lifetime warranty. Right now, when you visit wickedtreegear.com, use the promo code TRUTH at checkout and save yourself 20% discount on your Wicked purchase. We're also brought to you by Exodus Outdoor Gear. The new Exodus Trek is a byproduct of all consumer voices who have been excited about what Exodus Trail Cameras has to offer, but just can't fit a $200 camera in their budget, and that's okay. A budget-friendly camera backed by the industry's leading warranty is now here. The Trek comes in at $145. It has the same proprietary shell design as a Lift Series camera, so you're getting a quality camera. The same 5-year warranty and unmatched customer service policies. The 0.7 trigger speed that we love also, of course, comes with photo, video, time-lapse, and hybrid modes, and is a single-line backlit LED display for easy setup. You also get 20,000 images or pictures on a set of lithium batteries, so battery life is kick-ass. And if you'd like to learn more about Exodus Trail Cameras, check them out at ExodusOutdoorGear.com, or you can head to the TruthFromTheStand.com partner page and click through there as well. If you like what you see, save yourself $20 and use the promo code TRUTH at checkout. We're also brought to you by Tecumani Seed. If you aren't putting Tecumani seed in the ground, you are missing out. They have everything that you need to grow an awesome plot. This, of course, is the time of year where you should be kind of getting your spring stuff kicked off and planted if, Mother Nature continues to cooperate with no snow, hopefully. So everything is bigger in Texas. No matter if you're in the South, Midwest, or the Northeast, Tecumani has your food plot seed needs covered. Visit Tecumani.com and check out their product selector tool. to help pick up the right seed for your needs. Use the promo code TRUTH at checkout and save 20%. Last but not least, Glacier Coolers, simply the world's finest. Whether you're hunting, camping, or fishing, you'll enjoy smarter design, stronger construction, and superior insulation of Glacier Coolers. Visit them at glaciercoolers.com. And one last thing is we're going to be doing some giveaways here in the not so distant future from a bunch of our different partners. And if you are not yet following Truth from the Stand on Facebook and Instagram, you might want to go ahead and do that, as we'll be running a lot of the stuff, or the ways to enter and get involved in the giveaways will be through those two platforms. So be sure to follow us on both of those. And without further ado, let's get Trevor on the line. All right, welcome back. We are live, and you're listening to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today, my guest is a good buddy of mine. You've probably heard me mention him just a handful of times on some of the previous podcasts that John and I have recorded. I'm talking to my buddy Trevor Navarra. Trevor is he's a new hunter. Just recently passed his hunter safety course. So certified. He is certified and ready to roll. Has never hunted before, and my buddy Wilson and I are taking him on his first turkey hunt this year. And it's one of those things where, when we talk about hunting recruitment, a lot of folks kind of, as when we had Ryan Fuhr on, we talked, of course, about all the different ways to recruit and the different levels of recruitment, whether it's adult or child or whatever the case might be. And introducing kids to the outdoors is always great long term, right? But the challenge is that they can't take themselves hunting. They still need the help of an adult to get them out, and which doesn't necessarily help your hunter numbers immediately. The important thing is introducing the folks who might be interested in hunting, but might be older and maybe are a little bit hesitant to ask for help to get out into the outdoors and give it a try. And adults, of course, can actually take themselves hunting. They have the means, a car, license, money to buy the gear and so forth. So it's a much quicker uptick in that regard. And of course, all the benefits that I think we all as hunters kind of recognize of being in the outdoors, like the mindfulness, the peacefulness, the time alone, the time to kind of reflect with your own thoughts, and of course, just to enjoy nature, is quite a gift to be able to give someone. So that's what we plan to do with Trevor. And, today we wanted to just kind of get with Trevor and kind of talk to him about how he's feeling about his upcoming hunt and get a little bit of a non-hunter's perspective as he gets ready to turn into a hunter. So, how you doing, my man?
I'm good.
You good?
Yeah, I've never recorded one of these before.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Me either. I'm not very good at this either.
It's a little awkward.
A little awkward. It is a little awkward sitting here talking to each other on a microphone. So this morning, it's a Saturday morning. We're recording this, and we actually went out and just shot guns and got you acquainted with some 12 gauges that you're going to be, one of which you'll be using for our hunt on opening day. And as we were driving back from shooting, I was just saying how surprised I was at how good of a shot you are, which is a nice kind of thing to take care of, because not a concern there, because, man, you were actually a pretty decent shot. So tell us how you became quite the pea shooter.
I've shot guns in the past. I've gone skeet shooting. I've gone to target, to ranges before. But this is only with, friends who have guns, or, friends with parents have brought me out. And it's never been, I've never been hunting, as you just said.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, I guess practice in the past.
Right. That, and I think the other thing that played, and I was actually thinking this before we went, it's like so, for all of you out there who don't know Trevor, which would be 100% of you listening, is that you're a really calm guy. Like, Trevor and I have worked together for the past 3 years, yeah, and you're always very even keel. And I assume that would probably bode well for you in shooting, because a lot of shooting, whether it's a bow or whether it's a gun, is all about, keeping kind of like your mind clear and being able to focus and staying calm and those types of things, which you kind of have, like, your personality is kind of that way anyway.
Yeah.
So whenever you grabbed the gun and you weren't necessarily, you knew how to use one because you've used one before, but you were very comfortable with it and very kind of, I don't want to say calculated, but you had a process. Like, you knew what you were doing, and you were very, process is the right word, but you had a plan, whenever you went to shoot, and it's like, it was evident, you know what I mean? Like, you weren't rattled by having a gun in your hand. You weren't, standoffish or scared of it, because some people will grab one if they don't shoot often, and they're scared of it, which is, a fine, kind of feeling to have. But I guess for those out there that are listening that don't know you, of course, give me a little bit of background about you, where you're from, and what you do professionally, so people kind of get a sense of who you are.
Yeah. Grew up in Rochester, New York, upstate New York. Professionally, art director by trade. Yeah, I've worked with Clint for the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm. For better or worse. Sometimes, most of the times for worse, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, grew up loving the great outdoors. Vacation a lot in the Adirondacks. Mm-hmm. We just spent a few weeks every summer up there. My mother went to the Adirondacks all her life. And then probably within the past 10, 15 years, spent a lot of time up in the Thousand Island region, which is, north of the Adirondacks, St. Lawrence River, kind of borders Canada and upstate New York. Yeah, I mean, what else do you want to know about me?
I want to know everything. We want to get into the deep, dark places that you don't want to talk about. No, I'm just kidding.
It was a cool April morning.
So you mentioned, and I know this about you. You're a person. You spent some time in California as well, and prior to that, you were a videographer, right?
Yep. Yeah, I live in California, Los Angeles specifically, for over a decade. I was a camera operator and DP for a lot of TV shows, a lot of National Geographic Channel and Discovery Channel shows. So yeah, good with the camera. That's kind of, it was. I don't really want to say past life because I still do a lot of camera work. But yeah, that's I do a lot of design and camera work now, so it's kind of
right. And so you always were kind of. And I know this about you. It's like the outdoors have always kind of interested you. Like you like being outside, like, because I know you bike.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I know you like to hike and, yep. And get outside as much as you possibly can. So I guess let's talk just a little bit about like some of the different things you've done in the outdoors that were not hunting related or anything like that. Like what are some places that you've biked or hiked or just places that you've been that you really liked?
California is ridiculous.
Right.
You can be at the beach in the morning and then, you can be on the slopes in the afternoon. So, a lot of, when I was out there, it was a lot of, I remember chasing storms with a buddy of mine, mm-hmm. Going up to Mammoth, skiing, just big mountain skiing. Winter, that's my main kind of sport, my main, what I love. Especially out west, the mountains right. are huge. And it's just, if you get a good powder day, it's heaven. Besides that, I try, and I'm not really a bit of a gym rat, so I really like, when I'm working out, it's all running, it's all bike, cycling, just, I have 2 young kids, so I wish hiking was more part of my life right now, but
right.
unfortunately it's about we go about a mile before there's a meltdown.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And we got to turn back. But we're getting there. My youngest is 3, so he's getting to be about the age where we can start going with more of a distance.
Right. He's got short legs, and you're a tall guy, so it's hard to keep up with. I'm sure I have a hard time keeping up with people who have long legs.
Yeah. I just love the great outdoors, and that's kind of what.
Right, and I know anytime you would go up north to visit your folks and stuff like that, you would kind of talk about, I know you like the water and stuff mm-hmm. like that. You like being out. Of course, the region that you grew up in lended itself to being around the water. But I guess for as we're kind of getting ready to take you on your first hunt, like I'm curious because I don't know that I've ever specifically asked you this. I know that we've talked a lot about hunting and my hunting trips whenever I would come back. Because we worked on the same team together and we would always just kind of share what we did on the weekends and stuff like that. And a lot of times mine was going hunting or scouting or something or preparing for a hunt or whatever. And, as we kind of started talking about it, like I started seeing you show more and more interest in like what I was doing. Cause you have to understand, like as a person who hunts and working in the industry that we work in, kind of choiceful with who and how much I share information, or how much information I share. So, cause some people are squeamish about it. Right. And I also want to be sensitive to people's wishes of maybe wanting to know certain details or not wanting to know certain details. Not that I feel I have to apologize for being a hunter, and I will tell anyone that. But in terms of the amount of information I share, it's like, of course, I don't want to share something with a person who doesn't want to know about the kill shot or whatever, you know what I mean? Because my goal isn't to shock anybody. Honestly, it's to do the opposite. It's to kind of get people to understand more about it and why I do it. So I'm just curious, like, at what point did you start getting interested in like maybe trying hunting? And then what was the reason you were kind of like, man, this is something I kind of want to do?
Well, I mean, we've known each other 3 years, and like, I don't know when, I kind of started to, when you really kind of started to bring it into our conversations, but, I for someone who knows nothing about hunting, didn't grow up hunting,
have no hunters in your family, as far as I know, right?
None whatsoever. Call me naive, but I thought you just walk into the woods with a rifle and see a deer and shoot it.
Right.
It's like, that's not it at all.
Right.
Like this is a huge part of your life, and I saw that passion in you like early on. I'm like, what the hell is he talking? Like, what is this all about?
Right.
And then you start breaking it down, like their habits, like throughout the year, like that they're, what kind of got me going is like, holy, there's a science to this.
Right.
Like this is not just like
Joe Blow walking into the woods and popping off around and calling it a day.
Yeah.
Right.
And especially you with bow hunting, when you have to like you're close.
Yeah.
This is not like long range,
Right.
Like you have to know the characteristics of of that deer.
Right.
And that aside, like when I see someone like you who's so crazy passionate about something, I'm just like, wow, that's really interesting. And I just want to want to just gain,
check it out,
knowledge, experience, like all that shit.
Right.
It's like, that's what I think is really cool about it.
Right. And then the other piece of it then kind of became like, I think when we really started talking about it was I started sharing some game with you. You know what I mean? Because that's the one thing that like, and this isn't like we were good friends, so I didn't mind doing this, but it's like one of the things is that what I always kind of had an idea that I would like to try to introduce you to hunting. You know what I mean? Earlier in our relationship, before I actually invited you or whatever, because you had this like curiousness about things, right? That you like experiences, you like different things, things that are just like new and intriguing. Like you're all about trying it. You know what I mean? Like you don't turn down like an interesting opportunity. You know, that you enjoy good food. You know what I mean? And interesting foods and stuff like that. And so once I saw that you were kind of somewhat interested in the idea of it, my next step was really to start to introduce you to like the game meat side of it, like the food side of it, because I know that you eat healthy as well as I do and try to eat as healthy as you possibly can. And that's kind of like the other component of it, is that once I knew those things about you, I was like, man, this just makes this is just too logical for him to try this. It makes too much sense.
Yeah. He
He loves the outdoors. He likes new experiences. You have 2 young kids that could use some peace and quiet, some time to yourself. You know what I mean? And then, of course, you were digging the game meat that I would share with you and figuring out how to prepare it and what's the best way to prepare it and stuff like that. And then knowing, because that's where our conversation evolved to, is that you would start asking me how I was going to prepare certain things that I was harvesting.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was like, why don't I just take him hunting? Why don't I just let him? Because I remember the last conversation was about turkey, because I gave you some goose to try. Yeah. And I started talking about turkey in the spring, and you were like, well, what do you do with it? You were like, do you eat it? And I said, of course. And you said, I'm trying to remember your words exactly. You were like, I've never had wild turkey. I've only ever had store-bought turkey. And you said, I would really like to know what wild turkey tastes like and if it was any different. And my comment back to you is like, why don't I just take you and you kill your own? Yeah. And you were like, your eyes got like as big as saucers. And you were like, really? And I was like, yeah, why the hell not? You know what I mean? I was like, you're into all this, you're into everything leading up to that point. You know what I mean? It's like, there's this aspect of like, especially you being a crafts person, a creative person, you know what I mean? That's part of like the outdoor experience, is that creativity, right? Because it's like you walk into it with a blank slate. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you only get out of it whatever it is that you're willing to kind of put into it, you know? Very, very similar to the creative process. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, you know, I guess now that, you know, the intent of like this first podcast with you is to kind of understand like where your mindset is with like hunting. So before like you met me, what were your thoughts about hunting? Were you like pro hunting, anti hunting? Were you like non-committal either way? Did you have any thoughts about, or did hunting was it something that just never crossed your mind? Like, not just from a perspective of doing it, but just even in the thought of like noticing that other people do it and how you felt about it. Before we continue our conversation, let's talk about Wicked Tree Gear saws. Hardcore deer hunters need tools that can keep up. We don't baby our gear, taking on whatever Mother Nature happens to dish out. Check out Wicked Tree Gear hand saws and pull saws at wickedtreegear.com. Use promo code TRUTH to save yourself 20% on your next purchase with free ground shipping. And get a saw that's tough enough to work as hard as you hunt.
It was never a part. I never thought like I go hunting because I'm not gonna like go to a store and buy a gun and walk into a forest and because I don't know anything about it.
Right.
Like you gotta have a teacher. Like
right.
You gotta have some like a mentor, like whether it be your a family member.
With the online certification didn't teach? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't know everything.
Yeah,
you're not ready.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
You can't learn karate from books.
Right. It's funny to watch people try though.
Karate Kid.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead though.
So it never crossed my mind. I was like, no, there's no way I would ever hunt because I don't have someone who, you need that person. You need someone to take you and teach you, So when you said that, I was like, whoa, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like new thought. Like I've never,
right.
This is going to be a new experience,
Mm-hmm. In every sense of the word. Like,
I've never had any qualms about hunters. I think conservation is hugely important. Like
mm-hmm.
I'm an environmentalist. I love the great outdoors and I understand the importance of hunting.
Right.
And I always have.
Okay. That's interesting that you've always made that connection because a lot of people who don't hunt don't make that connection. Right.
Well, I majored in it. I'm sorry. I minored in environmental science.
Okay. So. There you go. So I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with that, like, would you agree that most people who didn't major in environmental science and don't hunt, minored in environmental science and don't hunt, do you think that they make that connection between hunting and conservation, or do you think that that's a pretty far gap for them to kind of traverse without someone kind of helping?
I don't know if it's a far gap, but I think it's there's a gap.
Yeah.
I think, they definitely don't. There's a reason.
Right.
There's a reason why there's so many regulations.
Right.
There's a reason why you can only, take, X amount of game home,
Right.
There's a system in place for a reason.
Right. Now, would you say, so take your family as an example that's not hunters and exclude anyone who has a minor in environmental science.
Yeah.
Do you think any of them would make the connection between hunting, like license sales, right? The money that hunters generate and their, not just their financial impact on conservation, but their managing of the wildlife through hunting. Do you think they make that connection at all ever? Or do you think that is something that, unless they're kind of specifically told or explained, might be a better way to put it, that is the only time they would make the connection between a hunter who kills animals, right? Because that's the argument you always hear. It's like, well, how are you conserving if you're killing? It's like they don't get the fact that, like, there's a management aspect of it. Then there's also a fiduciary aspect of it that has to be in place through license sales to help manage those lands that those animals inhabit.
Yeah.
Right. So do you think, are those people making that connection? Or do you think it takes something like you minored in something in college or someone having a conversation with them to kind of explain that? Or will they never make that connection otherwise?
I think it's going to be hard for them to make that connection.
Right. Because it's really hard for them to fathom killing equals saving.
Yeah,
it's a very harsh juxtaposition.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
It doesn't, right? Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like probability and statistics never made a lot of sense to me. The way I made sense of it is that it doesn't make sense. It's not logic. Like you can't be logical with something that is not a logical process.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
And that's kind of how I view hunting and conservation. Like at face value, for someone who has no information, it seems completely illogical.
Yeah.
Right. Until you start to understand, I
always thought it was just the sport of it.
Right.
Right. There's nothing. There's like this, like, getting your own game.
Right.
Not like there's not like anything greater.
Right.
The hunting community is not working at anything greater than what the sport just has to offer.
Right. Right. And then when you get right down into it, it's like, man, like there is a whole world of things that are going on in the hunting community that hunters are pushing forward that a lot of people just don't know about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm curious, man, like, so we're getting ready to go hunting. You know, we've kind of talked about your background, and we've talked about, like, you know, when you kind of started getting the idea that hunting might be a possibility, the barrier, of course, that you kind of, you know, spoke to, which I think a lot of people who are non-hunters face the same thing. They might have an interest, at least to maybe try it, but how do you get started? Right. But, you know, heading into your first hunt, like, what are your feelings or expectations for your first hunt?
I mean, I'm nervous as hell.
Yeah. Okay, let's peel this onion here. So, what part of this are you nervous for?
Seeing a turkey, you know,
Live for the first time.
Live for the. I mean, yeah. I mean, like,
well, not live for the first time, because you've seen them.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of turkey, but looking down the barrel, and like, oh my god, like, it's time to pull the trigger.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, so let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you feel about that aspect of it? Because that's a piece of it that, as a hunter, like, as a person who's grown up hunting, right? Like, I don't really think about that aspect of it until after it's done, right? Yeah. So, because for me, it's like, I've always said, like, I've never harvested an animal that I didn't partially get, you know, I don't know if choked up's the right word, but, like, I definitely felt the gravity of what I had done.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? But not in a bad way, because it's like, I'm built, like, humans were built to do that. Like, that's how we've evolved. And that was, you know, we are hunters, gatherers by, you know, it's innate that that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? But I still have this moment of, like, I understand that I just took a life, you know what I mean? But I don't think about it, and never have prior to the act, because it's just, it was always something, it was normal for me growing up. Like, I was always around hunters. My dad hunted, my uncles, my grandfathers. So it was like, from the time that you were a kid, like, I was shooting guns, and we raised turkeys and killed turkeys to eat whenever I was a kid. So it's just like, I understood that's where food came from. So I never had the issue prior. Afterwards, yes, there were feelings, you know what I mean? But prior to, there never were. So, like, that's interesting that you mentioned that's, like, actually a thought that you're having. Like, when that moment of truth happens, like, how am I going to feel? So, like how do you feel about it now? Like, what's your thought process?
Like I said, I'm, like, really nervous. Like, I don't, like, I grew up, my family, big bass fishermen. Like, that's, I mean, I know fishing, you know, and now recently I brought up, you know, taken up fly fishing. There's some really great trout streams in this area. And I have, you know, caught a fish, I've cleaned a fish. Like, so I guess I've taken a life in that sense, but, like, it's, you've got the fight, you know, you've got, you got the battle, and you eventually, like, you know, you catch the fish, you keep the fish, and then down the line you clean it. And that's usually maybe when, you know, the fish maybe is already suffocated and died.
Right.
Before you've cleaned it, or, you know, it's just kind of flapping. You're like, oh boy, that's kind of weird.
Right.
But I've never, like, in an instant taken a life.
Right.
You know, and that is really, that's a really weird feeling.
And I would say, I'm glad that you have that feeling, because, like, to me, when you make that harvest, if you have that feeling, like, if that's a feeling you have either before or after, to me, that means you've kind of, you understand, you know what I mean? And I feel like you are more appreciative, or you are appreciative of what that animal is providing in terms of, you know, one, you know, the food that you're going to use with your family, you know what I mean? Two, you know, the opportunity to enjoy the outdoors and pursue something that's, you know, a lot of fun, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that it's good that you have that feeling, because I would be concerned for someone who has never hunted before, right? At an older age. I think for kids it's a little different, right? Totally. Because they haven't gotten to that point of, like, being able to rationalize what's happening or understand, like, what is really going on, you know? They do from just an academic perspective, right? Like, my daughter's 9 and she'll go out and go turkey hunting this year again. And when she finally kills one, it's like, she will just do it, and she will probably have those feelings, like, afterwards. But I don't think it's a thought for her, like, in advance. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think for someone who's getting into it as you get older, I think it's different. You know what I mean? I think you have a little bit better of an understanding of what you're doing, what the outcome is going to be, and all those things. So it's like, I'm glad that you have that feeling. It'd be interesting, like when we do the follow up, then hopefully you kill one. Hopefully, I'm hoping you pull the trigger and your inner self doesn't get the better of you at the moment of truth. But if it does, that'll be just as fine. That'll be just as well. So now we know what you're like most nervous about, right? I want to know, like, what is the part you're most excited about?
I'm really like, I look at this as like, this is just completely foreign.
Mm-hmm.
And I when you first brought up this idea, like my first thought, it was selfish. I was like, this is a new experience for me. Like, this is completely off my radar. Like, I have no idea what to expect, and
right.
I'm all for that. Like, and then, you break it down more and you're like, this is a big deal. I'm really just excited, like, just to, when we're out there with Wilson and when he's calling, like, I'm really just, I'm really kind of looking forward to, like, before, like, we see the turkey, just like the anticipation, just like, just sitting and sitting and waiting and just like being in nature and not, just like, you just kind of lose yourself.
Yeah.
Like, and you've told tons of stories to me just about, like,
yeah,
you're just like, you get lost in your head and, like, you just start hearing everything around you. And that is like, again, work is crazy. I come home, family life is crazy. It'll be,
the news is crazy.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like everything is.
Life is nuts right now.
Yeah.
And just that idea of just silence and just like total, like, peace. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But then, if we do,
and in an instant,
yeah,
it takes off. You know what I mean? Like, that's the crazy part about hunting is, like, I don't know how many times, deer hunting specifically, because turkey is a little different to where it's like, you'll kind of know, you know what I mean? It's like, Wilson has a pretty decent spot picked out that we know that there are birds there. We should hear them early in the morning, first off when they come off the roost. And then we'll start to hopefully work one to come in and start calling back and forth. So it's very interactive, right? Yeah. So you'll kind of hear them approach to a degree. But there are times where I've been turkey hunting where it's like, I've had one come off the roost. I was calling, sometimes they'll come to you quiet. Like, you'll call a couple times and then they'll answer back and then you stop and then they'll start coming to you without kind of, calling back to you anymore. And they'll be right behind you, like 20 yards and just gobble and scare the living shit out of you. You know what I mean? Like, that's happened to me on many occasions. Deer hunting's a little different where it's like you're in a stand and sometimes they're so stealthy and quiet, man. It's like you can't imagine that, like, a 200-pound deer can walk through the woods in dry leaves and get to within 15 yards of you and you never heard it. You know what I mean? Like, you just turn around and there it is. Like, I've been like half like falling asleep before in a tree stand, open my eyes and there's a deer. You know what I mean? Like, tree stand sleep is some of the best sleep I think I've ever had in my life, to be quite honest with you. It's very peaceful as long as you don't fall out. I'm not condoning it. Just make sure you have a tree strap or your harness on. But you're right. It's like it goes from like that serenity to like balls out crazy at the snap of a finger in a lot of cases. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. I know you mentioned that you were like, this is like a selfish thing. Like, this is for me. And it absolutely is. But I'm like super stoked to like take you. You know what I mean? I'm super excited to like just, it's the same. It's weird. Like, it's the same type of thing. Like, the first time I kind of took my daughter and she heard a turkey gobble for the first time. And it was like, just watching her reaction was like, I was like, I don't need to shoot. I don't even need to take a gun or a bow or anything. It's like, it was more just about watching her. So I'm super stoked to like take you out and just kind of watch your reaction to all these things that are going to happen for the first time. Because, I think as hunters, like, we sometimes start to take it a little bit for granted because we do it often. Mm-hmm. Right. And, I try to make myself stop and kind of reflect whenever I'm out and just kind of think about how fortunate I am to be able to do some of these things and spend the time in the outdoors and stuff like that. But to be able to watch it through like someone else's eyes that's doing it for the first time, it's like, it's kind of mind blowing because it kind of takes you back to some of those feelings you had on some first hunts and stuff like that. So I'm excited to take you, and I'm hoping that you get a bird with a nice rope. And I'm really looking forward to like the harvest shot of you, like you holding this bird up. Like, I'm just,
oh God. I'm like getting nervous just thinking about it, man.
Yeah, I know you're all like, we're sitting here and like your shoulders are all like creeped up on you and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, man, I'm super stoked. So
yeah, I am too.
It's I think you shoot well. Wilson's a great caller, so we'll have a good opportunity. I mean, we'll have a much better opportunity with him calling than we would me calling, because I'm not a great turkey caller. And the kicker is we're filming all this stuff to hopefully make some type of short film. So your success or failures are going to be
let's just hope, I'm just going to see me crying after.
Yeah. I kind of hope that happens, but not really. Trevor broke down after he harvested a turkey. He felt really bad. He sobbed. No, I think you're going to do great, man. And I really hope, for many reasons, I hope you get at least an opportunity, and really hope that you get one. Only because I think for you as a new hunter to be able to kind of have that experience, have success, and then most importantly for me, in my opinion at least, is to take it home and then use it.
Yeah.
It's like to have that thing be full circle for you. It's like, to me, that's like the coolest part of it, is that, I relive my hunts throughout the year every time I eat venison that I've harvested, or like the elk that we got in Montana this year, or the goose that I got this winter, or the duck, or whatever. It's like I get to it takes me back to that like feeling again in that moment, and I get to kind of relive it over and over again, and it gives me an opportunity to give thanks to that animal over and over again. You know what I mean? That they gave the ultimate, made the ultimate sacrifice, and I'm going to use it to its fullest, and honor it in that way. So I get to kind of have that over and over again, which is a really, really cool thing that I hope that you get to feel, because I know I've shared stuff with you, and that's awesome, but it's like, there's nothing like doing it yourself, and being able to go home to your kids and say, Dad got this. Yeah. Like, Dad provided this. It's like,
they're gonna be like, what?
What? I thought it got from the store. Like, it's like you work at what you call it, Giant now, or Whole Foods now, or Wegmans now. You know what I mean? It's like,
what?
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, I know you have some things to do, and I know you were trying to get out to do some fly fishing today, so I won't keep you, but I'll look forward to having you back on after the hunt. Success or no success, we'll
still have fun.
Yeah, we'll still have fun, and we'll do a follow-up podcast to see how your feelings have maybe changed since the hunt. Awesome.
Cool.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. We'd like to thank Trevor for joining, and then we'd, of course, like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes, and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so we can deliver each and every podcast directly to your devices. Also, if you'd like to follow along with Trevor's hunt in real time, we'll likely be doing some some Instagram stories. So be sure to follow Truth from the Stand on Instagram, as we'll post that as it happens in real time. And before we shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. Wicked Tree Gear, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Trophy Ridge, Ozonics, Obsession Bows, Tecumani Seed, Glacier Coolers, Ramcap Broadheads, and Trophy Taker Rests. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
Show you through the door. I ain't welcome anymore. A long time coming, if it all. It takes a special knowing to color for. Damaged heads, broken letters, rationalize yourself in numbers, but I gotta do